Welcome to the dark zone in art. My name is Wendy Mould, and I wanted to talk to you today a bit about shadows. I know that we're all familiar with the basic ideas about shadows. Depending on the light, the shadows will be in various different lengths and shapes and directions. And those are not the kind of things I want to look at. I want to look deeper into shadows and what happens with the shadows. One of the things I want you to notice is what happens with the shape of the shadow. If you take a look, you'll see that the sharp, and by shape I guess I'm really talking about edges. Edges I find are such a key thing for anything to do with drawing. If you take a look here, you'll see that the edges close to the object of the cast shadow are very sharp and very dark. But look what happens when we move further away. The edges become a little bit softer and the value changes. And this is because of the effect of ambient light, the light that's reflected around an object and around the shadow. If you take a look at the shadows on the object, you'll see as well that effect of ambient light. Well, I'll just show you there. There, that's better. Look at this shadow here. Yes, it's dark, but it's not as dark as it is down below and in some of the crevices. And then take a look at the shadow of the neighboring object. For example, if this was two trees in the forest, they both have the same light effect on them and the light's in the same direction, but the shadow patterns are not exactly the same. Each one is different because it's in a different plane. So watch for things like that when you're looking at and building your shadows. Take a look at the edges. Are they sharp or are they softened? In the case of here where it's round. Are they equal? Is the value equal throughout the shadow? Or does it change? Does the effect of ambient light change that shadow? I find those interesting things, and I also find that if I can keep those in mind when I'm drawing and painting, it has a great effect on how the three-dimensional effect that my work will have. I have a little activity sheet that I'd like to kind of show you that gives you an idea of what this looks like in practice. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, let's have a look at what values and shadows really look like once you get into the real subject. Now, working with this kind of thing, I always like to challenge myself. And so here is an example of what I would do to practice that kind of thing. I would take a simple subject, which here is my nice little mushroom. And where I got this mushroom is I was walking in Tynehead Park, which is a favorite place for Max and I to go. And it was really quite exciting. I got 11 different kinds of mushroom pictures of different mushrooms. And of course, this one being the red and white is the one that really catches your eye and my favorite. It's so much fun to draw and paint and work with. So anyway, I call these pretty but poisonous because of course they are very poisonous, but they are a pretty mushroom and they certainly show up in the bush. Now let's take a look at what happens with the shadows here. Here's what I was talking about. We have the shell come over and we have this little skirt underneath. Notice that the shadow has a very sharp edge where these two meet. And this tells us that the shell comes out and that the skirt is underneath. And so this edge is sharp, but notice the shadow is not uniform all the way through in value. The value gets lighter and the edge gets softer and softer as it moves out. And this is because the skirt is not flat. It's skirted out and it has the shell on top. And so as you move further out on the skirt, you have more the effect of ambient light. And so that is now lighting up the edge of this and into here. So there is our sharp edge, there is our soft edge. The value is changing as we go from that edge out. This happens again at the bottom of the skirt, where the skirt and the stem are meeting. Again, we have this sharp edge here, and then we have the softer edge as again, ambient light is coming forward. Now in this particular mushroom, it's kind of cheating because, as you know, notice there's not a clear direction of light here. And so ambient light is having a lot of effect on the stem and all of this here. There is a sense that there is light coming from this way, just from these highlights here. But in fact, this is in the forest and there was very little direct sunlight on it. So this is a good practice one because you're not going to get clues from this as to how the shadows should be. So what I've done is I've taken that mushroom and I've made myself a simple drawing sheet. Really eliminated a lot of the details and just put that in there. And if you notice, Max is hiding here in the corner to keep us company. So I have put in my direction of light and I'm going to have my light source coming from here. And now what I'm going to do is color this with my pencils. So I'm just using my graphite pencils, and by color I mean putting in some value and seeing if I can make this into a 3D picture by correctly interpreting the shadows. So for this exercise, I like to have some soft pencils and some hard pencils. So here I've got my F pencil, which is going to be for the softest, the lightest areas. And I like to keep my texture, and that's why I change my pencils up. Then I have a 2B pencil, then a 5B, and then an 8B. And of course the 8B is going to give me that really dark area, but it's also going to keep the texture because I don't have to press very hard. Now these are the Caran d'Ache pencils, but you can do this with any of your pencils, graphite pencils that have a different rating. Okay, so let's get started on coloring our mushroom. Oh, by the way, if you would like to use my coloring sheet, I do have it as a printable download, and you can get that information in the link in the introduction for this video. So it doesn't take too long to color this little mushroom thing, but you do find you'll learn lots of interesting things with it. Even just looking at what I've done so far, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. There's lots of fun little things you can play with as you're doing this drawing. One of the things I like to play with is I like to pretend if the light's coming this way, then this little flap of the skirt was probably going to show. It's also going to throw a shadow then on this little part here of the mushroom. So that's kind of a little game I like to play. I'll show you one that I've already finished. This is some other little games I like to play. I like to color in this stick and then I have fun to show how the shadow is going over the leaves. And again, who's darker, the stick or the stick's shadow? Looking at this leaf here, for example, it's lots of fun to play with it because it's kind of a curled. And so I know that the top of it is going to be lighter and this part here is away from the light. So as it curls, it's going to get darker and it's lighter going up. Another little fun thing, of course, playing with these little spots on top here. Now this is something, how dark should dark be? Now this is the dark side, so in actual fact, I could make this quite a bit darker in here, and it just to really create, because not only is it the value, but it's also the color that I'm trying to show. Each of these little white things also is going to have a shadow behind it, so you want to take a moment and put a little shadow behind them, and again, it's going to change in value and it's going to change in size depending where it is. There's also these little bumps are not rounded, they're awkward shapes. So each of them is going to have a little shadow in them on the back in order to give them that look that they need to have. So that's kind of a fun thing to play with there. And just challenge yourself. I like to challenge myself to see how many different values I can make on something, how soft I can make the edges, playing with this branch here just to see whether, again, talking about two different branches, they're going to have two different effects. So I tried to make the shadows different on them. This one I felt was closer to me, so therefore its shadow is going to be bigger, wider. So I made it wider, and this one narrower. And it seems to work. Just playing with lots of different things, whether often it's got a bit of backlight here, and so remember when you were looking at it with the flashlight, the shadow on the edge was not always solid. So I played with the backlight a little bit here, and I kind of think that has a realistic look. I've also done this, and then of course, once you've done it once, do it again. Try it now. Here I made my light source coming from this direction, and look at how it changes that picture to have the light coming from this direction. Again, each of these leaves, now we have the light on this side, where before we had the light on this side. And notice it just changes that. Little things like that make. This little skirt, I still have it sticking out, and then I decided maybe just the little tip of it is going to get a bit of that light. So it gives me the sense that that skirt is really sticking out quite a bit. As I say, these are just little games I play as I'm busy coloring this up. You can see the shadows here. Now that this is quite close to the light, so these shadows are going to be quite a bit lighter behind each of the pieces, where here the light is over here. These shadows are going to be a little bit darker. So there's lots of, this simple little picture is fun to play with, and it gives you lots of practice on how to deal with your shadows and your values in anything that you're painting. And of course, if you can get the shadows right and the values right, the color will always look good. I have a few other pieces that I can show you some things that I've done with introducing the color as well. Anyway, again, if you would like to use the mushroom sheet as your practice sheet, by all means, just look at the link that I provided in the introduction. So now I'll give you a few examples of how this can look with a picture and with color.